Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, and I am bringing you Romans 9 today. So let's just say Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. We're going to be discussing what that means today. So if you're interested, stick with me, and I'll see you in a minute. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, and this channel is here to kind of merge Bible living with Bible literacy. So, we are going to be using the New Testament this year in order to understand what it's like to live as a follower of Christ. I have a link below in the description that I have a download that will bring you to a chronological Bible reading of the New Testament. So, what I want you to do is read every day and join me and hopefully some friends as we talk about what it means to live as a kingdom builder. Let's get started. Hey, and welcome to Bible 365. So today I'm bringing you Romans 9, which is another tough chapter because Romans itself is really tough, but Romans 9, Romans 8 and 9 have so much like enmeshed in it. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you a big picture, which is really hard when I'm only focused on a chapter. So I'm doing the best that I can. So bear with me as I go back to go forward. So Paul has written this letter. Paul is apostle who was saved by the Lord after he ascended, and he did not go to Rome. He did not build a church with these people, but he's sharing information with these people. And the information he's sharing seems, I mean, all the way up until this chapter, at the very least, he's really heavy-handed on the nation of Israel as to why they are not better than the Gentiles, which always leads me to believe that this is the information that he's hearing, that he's finding out that although they are a church that is enmeshed with each other, maybe they are trying to force, because this was a really big baby of Paul's. Paul was like, I went out and I preached to the Gentiles, which is something that we saw. The Lord gave him the Spirit to go out and preach to the Gentiles. And so he was preaching to the Gentiles. And then every time he would preach to the Gentiles, the Jews would come in and say, okay, now you need to assimilate to us, right? Now you need to be just like us. Or if there are any Star Trek nerds out there, it's like the Borg, right? Like now you need to be part of the clique. Great. You've agreed to all of our isms, all of our things. And so now we're going to be a collective that comes together and we all believe the same, talk the same, think the same, look the same, act the same, right? We all follow the same laws. And God this time, and that used to be more of the case back in the Old Testament, but this time God is very much like the Gentiles remain the Gentiles, the Jews remain the Jews, right? The Gentiles do not need to be circumcised, which was massive. This was a huge issue. They did not need to show outwardly that they had a covenant with the Lord, right? Which is obviously a huge thing according to the nation of Israel. They did not need to be under the law. So they didn't, because they got the freedom in Christ. This is different than before. So they didn't need to be under the law, where the law would say, you did this wrong, so now I make a payment to God. Well, then you did this wrong, so now I need to make another payment to God. God was like, no, but this is free now, right? So you did all that. I showed you all of those things. And this is what he talked about in the beginning of the letter, right? Like, what was the point of the law? Why did we do all this? That was to show you how much you were falling short. And now we know. And I sent my son to save you guys because now, after thousands of years, you saw that you were falling short. And my plan is now I'm sending the Lord. And now I'm bringing it to everybody. So what you had already, because you had me, now they're getting. But they're not under the same restrictions that you were under. And my guess is that Israel was kind of like, that's not fair. And it sounds immature, but if you think about your own heart, you probably think those kinds of things almost every day. Oh, I can't. Can you believe that that guy got away with speeding? You get pulled over, right? You get pulled over and you get handed a ticket, and you go, while you were writing me this ticket, I watched 10 people speed past here. Essentially, that's not fair. Why am I getting a ticket and they're not getting a ticket? The reality is you're saying in your heart, that's not fair. So as adults, we are just as immature as children. We just don't say it out loud, right? And we don't always give voice to it. Like, why aren't the cops going out? I don't know why I keep thinking of cops. Why aren't the cops going out and busting drug dealers? Why are they coming into my neighborhood and worrying about whether I do or don't fully stop at a stop sign? That's not fair, right? That's bigger fish to fry. They're worse than I am. So go get them and don't worry about me. Well, it feels like probably the nation of Israel was doing much the same in the nation of Rome. And I always say because they seem to be enmeshed with each other, right? Maybe there was a massive Jewish population and a massive Gentile population, and they were all just trying to figure it out, right? Like, how do we do this thing where we have very different um, genetic and psychological boundaries, but we need to live amongst each other? And so Paul's kind of reframing this over and over and over again. And I say that because taking this chapter apart from that understanding, I think loses a lot. And it also brings other weird doctrines into place that I don't necessarily think belong. Because the reality seems to me that his main message is that you are not better than them. And I think he's eventually going to say they are not better than you, but he's clearly saying here, you, even though you've been separate and apart and you circumcised and you have a covenant with the Lord, and you are not better than them. And so here's another sort of situation in which he's talking about. He's like, I tell the truth in Christ, I'm not lying. So he had just kind of given them all this other information. And then I feel like this is an expression that's basically like, honestly, to be fair with you, to be real, right? Because he wants them to know that he is pretty devastated about this. He is devastated that his brethren, the nation of Israel, isn't accepting of this message. This was a hard message to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, as we saw in the Gospels. If you weren't with me, go back. I did the Gospel of Luke this year. As we could see in the Gospels, the nation of Israel didn't like this message. Jesus did not come in the way that they wanted him to come. And they really, really don't like that Gentiles were involved. And now, on top of it, not only were Gentiles involved, but Gentiles get a free pass compared to them. Gentiles do not have to have the restrictions that they have to have. And so they were like, forget this. This can't possibly be the Messiah that God was talking about. And so Paul is upset about it. Paul says, I have great sorrow and continual grief in my heart. I could wish that I myself were cursed. So he's like, I would give up my own salvation for them, which is pretty amazing considering that he used to condemn all of those. And now he's like, I would give it up in order for the rest of the nation of Israel to believe, because it is so important to believe. I'm going off on a tangent I didn't plan on going off on, but this is your eternal life. If you are listening as somebody who doesn't believe, which I know I have some listeners that don't believe, which is fine. And it's great. I love that you're here. I'm excited. This isn't just a matter of semantics. This isn't just a matter of proving each other wrong. This isn't a waste of our time. This isn't just like, oh, I'm so smart. Let me give you some really great knowledge. I have some cool historical stuff. This has eternal ramifications. And you might go, I don't believe in eternity. And if I were to believe in eternity, right, because we can have some different ways. If I were to believe in eternity, your God sucks, which is some of what we're going to see today. Your God sucks because he doesn't just accept me the way I am. He makes me want to believe in him. Like, why would I have to do that in order to go into the place that he wants me to be? If he loves me so much, why would I have to do that? Why would I have to follow his rules? He made me the way that he made me. Why would I have to follow the rules that he gave me, which might be opposite of what I feel or believe? So we do these kind of things all the time, and this is not and even as Paul says it, like this is, he's willing to give up his eternal salvation for them to believe, right? And because he recognizes the truth of the situation, he recognizes the payment that is going to be paid after this life, being, I don't know what hell's going to look like, but being fully, completely separated from the Lord. Here on this earth, we are not one person that is alive on this earth has been separated from the Lord. Not one. Because he made the earth. He made everything in the earth. He's the one who brings the sun up. He's the one who sets the sun and brings up the moon. He does all of those things. So you are never separated from him, right? There are people all around you who love the Lord, and that goodness that is inside of them, all the goodness that is inside any person is the Lord, right? He gave you all of that. He says in Romans 1, like there's no excuse, right? Like it's everywhere. It's all around us. when this body is gone, you're either going to the place where you're with him always, right? Or you're going to the place where you're with him never. You don't even get a touch or a taste of this. So all the goodness that you feel now, all the joy, every time you smell a flower, you're not going to be getting that. That's not going to be down wherever. I say down. I don't know if it's really, well, I don't know. It's a supernatural place. So I don't know if it's down, over, across, whatever. But you're not going to get that. So this is eternal separation. So Paul recognizes the depth of this. And he's like, I don't want this for you. Let me please explain to you what this means. He said, I myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my countrymen, according to the flesh, who are Israelites, right? So he's talking about the people Israel, to whom, so this was the thing that was given to them, the adoption, the glory, and the covenants, and the giving of the law. This was all applicable to them. They were given all of this, right? So he's like, I'm devastated. They were given all of this. They had all of this background information that the Gentiles didn't have. They had all of this thing given to them. And it said, of whom the fathers came from. So not only were they given all of these like oracles and stuff of the Lord, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they're all their genetic fathers, right? They have the bloodline of all of this on top of it. So they've been given all this stuff by God. They have the bloodline, the genetic line of Jesus. They have all of that inside of them, right? And then he said, and from whom, according to the flesh, Christ came. So they have that. And then the actual body of Christ was born of their people. So if you want to boast in anything, let that be it, right? Like you were given all of that. I wasn't given any of that. I have the Bible now, the scriptures now, which is a huge blessing, but I wasn't genetically given any of that. And even quite literally, right? Because I wasn't born in a family that believed either. So I didn't have any of those things, right? I, in some ways, had to fight and scratch my, like, see, I shouldn't say that because people introduced it to me, but right. Like, so I wasn't given any of that. They were given all of these gifts and they still turned away from it. He said, but it is not that the word of God has taken no effect, because they are not all Israel who are of Israel. So like, it's not like none of this matters. This does matter. But he's like, but here's the deal. Now, just because you are of those things and you're from whom, to whom, for whom, just because you're of that, it doesn't mean you're an Israelite anymore. It doesn't mean that Abraham is your father. That's actually now the promise that's given to someone like me, who does not have any of those things, right? Who was not given any of those things from birth. But now, because of my faith, I am now in that family. And if they didn't believe, they aren't actually in that family. So back in the Old Testament, in that nation, there would have been times where people would have been cut off from their people. And some of those things, and I've probably mentioned in other videos, some of them would, when they were lepers, right? They were cut off from the community because they were unclean perpetually. So they were lepers and they were put into a leper community. Sometimes if they married outside of the Israelite community and they didn't repent, come back and divorce. If they didn't do that, then they were ostracized. They were sent away. They were put away, not to be allowed back into the nation of Israel. They had laws and standards according to God. And if you did not follow them, you were sent out of the family of Abraham. And now he's saying what it looks like is the faith is everything. You are a son of Israel if you have the faith. Just because you're a genetic son of Israel, if you don't have faith, you're no longer in the family. And then he follows, he says, nor are they all children because they're the seed of Abraham. So kind of going on, but he's I don't want to say switching points because he's not. He's keeping in the same point, but now he's going to bring up the story of Abraham and Isaac. But in Isaac, your seed shall be called, right? So your seed, your son, your descendant. So he said, not just in Abraham, because in Abraham, there was Ishmael, who was not of the promise. And then there was Isaac, who was of the promise. And then it said Isaac's son, right? Through the seed of Isaac is what's going to happen. And what we saw is that Jacob was the seed that this came in. Now, the rub is that Jacob should not have been the descendant of that. So if you didn't do Genesis, here we go again. I did Genesis, go all the way back to last year in the very beginning. I did Genesis. So there were twin brothers, Jacob and Esau. Esau was born first. Jacob was born second. But before they were born, Rebecca cried out to the Lord because she was like, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in my belly. So before they were born, she reached out to the Lord. And the Lord said, the younger or the older will serve the younger. Completely does not make sense in that time and in that day and age. Like now we don't necessarily do that as much, but firstborn sons were the ones who carried on the line. So if we go back to Abraham, Abraham's firstborn son was not technically his firstborn son, according to God. He was not the son of the promise. He was not the son of Sarah. He was the son of the maid Hagar. But Isaac was a firstborn son. He was the seed. We go here now, move down one, Isaac and Rebecca, and they have these twins. The firstborn technically was Esau. And if we go even in more detail, Esau comes out and he's this big, strong, hairy hunter, older brother. Jacob was none of those things. Jacob was actually wretched. He was awful. But still, he was the one who was told that he was going to rule over the other brother. So other things ensued. But the reality is then he says, not only this, when Rebekah had conceived by one man, even our father, for the children not yet being born, nor having done any good or evil, they had not been born yet, that the purpose of God, according to election, so according to being chosen, which is what Israel was, chosen, and then we have in this place, we've got Esau and Jacob. Jacob was chosen to be over Esau, right? So in the nature of being chosen, that the person of his election might stand, not of works, but of God, who makes the call. God's like, here's the deal. The deal is that Esau is going to serve Jacob. Now I'm thinking Esau probably could have just served Jacob and moved on with it, but he didn't. He actually turned away from God. He went and married a whole bunch of people outside of the nation of where he was supposed to, which was Abraham's people. He said, it was said to her, the older shall serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. So this is a verse that I feel like is kind of, we do both ways. We either over abuse it or we kind of overgo, well, it doesn't really mean that. And it's tough because hated has a lot of baggage on it. You would imagine that to hate is to detest someone. And so it's saying that Jacob was loved by the Lord, and then Esau, the Lord detested him. Contextually, which I hate to say, even though because I say it all the time, it doesn't seem like this is the case. And there are some other definitions, and it means to slight. So like to slight would make sense because he was supposed to be the one, and he wasn't. So God was like, well, deal with it. Jacob's in front and Esau is underneath. And it just is what it is. And they could have dealt with it and said, we love the Lord. It is what it is. This is the way he does it. And we're still going to continue to follow him. And they didn't. So even though he slighted Esau, right? Esau could have made better choices. But then you go, why would he have done that? Here we go back to, it's not fair. Why would he have done that? Why would he have this of nature? Esau should have come out and been the heavy hitter. Why would he put Jacob over Esau? It's not fair. It's not right. And God's like, because I'm God, and that's the choice I made. So he said, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with him? Is that an unrighteous act? Is it wrong for him to do that? And it says, certainly not. For he says to Moses, I'm going to have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I'm going to have compassion on who I have compassion. And then verse 16, so then it is not of him who wills, nor of him who runs, but of God. God is the one who does all these things. So you're mad about the Gentiles not having to do this, that, or the other. And like, you know what? That's God's choice. God said he wanted to do it, so he did it. And who are we to say anything different? I've told the story in one of my podcasts, but I'm telling it again. One of the things, and I'll shorten the version, during COVID, it was a really hard time for me. I really hated COVID. And I remember driving somewhere and there was nobody on the road. And it was just devastating to just see nobody ever on the road. You don't want to see, like, you don't want back-to-back traffic, but you don't want it empty either, because it's very eerie and very spooky in the area in which I live, because there's always cars on the road. So I was driving and I was just thinking, this sucks. This isn't fair. Why are we in shutdown? Why are we doing this? Why can't we? Why can't we? Why? Right? Not fair. And then I just remember at one point being like, God rules over all. If he decided that we were going to do this, and then this is what we're doing. If I don't think it's fair or I don't like it, I'm not God. And I know this answer twists against, because we're like, we have the power to do whatever we want. We can make rules, we can break rules, we can have protests, we can vote in, right? Like we can do whatever we want. We can stand up. And if we don't like it, we can break windows and make somebody else pay for it. So it doesn't sit well with us. But God created everything. This is an area in which God has to smack us down and say to us, you aren't me. Did you create the world? Did you make everything that was in it? Do you create humans? By the way, guys, we create nothing. Like we create products, right? But we can't create life. We create, and the Lord created every single thing. I'm an ant in a that lives very little time and has very little power. And God has to say sometimes, I have mercy on who I have mercy. I have compassion on who I have compassion. And who are you to judge? Because I'm the one who makes everything and I'm just. And by the way, I don't think he's a jerk about it, because it sounds a little jerky here. Like to me, at least it rubs my ears the wrong way. But I don't think he's a jerk about it. I think he's just letting us know. Mm-mm. I have compassion on who I have compassion. Don't you dare say, I can't have that person lead. Don't you dare say, I can't bring that person into our kingdom. Who do you think you are to say to me that I can't have compassion on that person? He can have compassion on whomever he wills. And that is what is so good about him, because he has compassion on so many of us that do not deserve it, right? We don't deserve to be shown his mercy, which is something that I've been from Romans 1. I feel like another heavy thing that Paul has been saying to us is recognize your worth. And by the way, I'm going opposite of what the world is saying. The world says, recognize your worth. You're so amazing. And I'm saying, recognize your worth. You are not as amazing as you think you are. God is amazing. He gives you everything. And then you have the nerve to judge who he doesn't give to somebody else, right? Like, it needs to sit with us, especially in a nation like ours, where we really think we're something special. And God's going to say, you are special, but you're not special in the way that you think you're special. You're actually greater than that, but you're also not as important as that, right? Like you're not the best at everything. You're not the most amazing person that's on the planet, but I made you, and I'm God, and I deemed you to be perfect the way that you are, which might be a little bit broken, which might be a little bit less than, which might be a little bit imperfect. But I made you, and I love you, and I want you to follow me. I'm going like sideways, I think, some ways, but I think that this is what he's bringing home. This is what he's doing. So he brings up Pharaoh, right? So he says, because it's not him who comes, right? There's a time where he uses Pharaoh to show his power. Again, this is back in Exodus. He uses Pharaoh to show his power, and he hardens Pharaoh, which again, it's tough. Pharaoh's already hardened, but then he continues to harden Pharaoh. Pharaoh's like, fine, I'll let you go. And God's like, no, 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 nope. Now I need to show everybody my power, right? Like everyone needs to know the things that I can do, because then they're going to look back on this moment and they're going to recognize that I am God. And then they're going to turn to me. That for me, even like before I was a believer, I didn't watch the Ten Commandments because it was super old and it was lame. And so I never actually watched that. But there have been other movies that have had Moses in it, and it's Ten Commandments like. It just wasn't the original. And I remember watching some of them and it really feeding into me and trying to understand, like, what was his purpose? And it's one of the things that actually brought me to faith, because I remember thinking at the time, like, well, a really good leader can do all of these things. But there were so many things that a really good leader couldn't do. And Moses, in general, wasn't a really good leader, right? What he was ordained by God. He wasn't actually a good leader. He fought with and killed someone. He wound up running away for 40 years. He wasn't the greatest of leaders. What he was ordained by God. He was given the power by God, and God did all of these miracles for the rest of the world to see, and for us to come back and to be reminded of these things, which is one of the things that I hate when everyone's like, oh, it's so fake. That stuff never happened. This is just an analogy. Like, I don't think he would remind you over and over and over and over and over and over again to remember those things if he didn't do those things. That's sort of the crux of the faith, is to remember what he did back then, how he showed his power. Again, we're going to say it right here. He said, verse 19, you'll say to me then, why does he still find fault? Because who's resisted his will? Like, so if he hardened Pharaoh, well, then why is it any of our faults if we don't follow him? And he said, will the thing that formed him say to him, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have power over the clay? What if God, wanting to show his wrath? Right? So, in other words, what if, and this I feel like is the Jesus story, what if God, wanting to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction? So, what if, right? Imagine, and this story really happened, these guys who have turned from him, what if he's now preparing these people, right? Now, through all of the people who don't believe, through all of the people who hate the Lord, what if he's preparing it for his people who keep turning away? And he's like, I'm going to prepare these people, right, in order to save these people. What if that's what he's doing? Imagine the power of the Lord that he's doing this. And then things align perfectly in order for the time to be right, Jesus to be killed by his own people. Can you see the imagery? And you're like, oh, how dare he? And Paul's going, but he did this for you who follow him. He did this for you guys who love him, right? He did this for you guys who know that there's something else, that know that there's something greater, and that want the Lord. He says, as he says also in Hosea. So now he's going back and he's confirming with the Old Testament. I will call them my people who are not my people. So he's preparing the way for the Gentiles, even back in Hosea. He's preparing the way for the Gentiles. And then in Isaiah, he says, though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, the remnant will be saved. So once again, it's not going to be everybody. Even though there's bazillions of them, there's going to be a remnant saved. And then, as Isaiah also says, unless the Lord of Sabaoth had left us a seed, we would have become like Sodom. He used all of this in order to bring about the glory of Jesus. This was his whole purpose, in order to bring those to himself. So he used all of this in order to bring us to himself. That is the power of God. And think of who he's brought. Like, I want you to look back at your life, whatever age you are now, look all the way back, yesterday, all the way back to your first memory. Did you need him to bring you? Or were you able to do it on your own? And the reality I hope that you come to is you absolutely needed him. You did not have the power to do it on your own. He had to show you who he was in order for you to come that way. He said, what shall we say then? The Gentiles, because here's the big thing, right? The Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness of faith. But Israel, pursuing the law of righteousness, has not attained to the law of righteousness. Why? Because they didn't seek it by faith, but as it were, by the works of the law. So those who are not following the Lord, those from Israel, from the nation, the brethren, it's because they're seeking it in the wrong way, right? If and we haven't done that book yet, but in the Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, there's this hall of faith, and each of the people in the hall of faith pursued by faith, not by the works that they had done. And a lot of them had the faith, but had to do the works kicking and screaming because it's too hard. The work is really hard. But if you have the faith, he gives you the power to do the work, even though it is really too hard. And I'm just going to finish with this. He says, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and a rock of offense, which is Jesus. I believe it's Jesus in this. And whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. So Jesus was intended to be a rock of offense to the nation of Israel. I think also to the nation of the Gentiles, right? Because he doesn't make sense. And so this was his purpose. God did this deliberately for those who have faith and not for those who follow works. I'm ending today. So if you have found this to be a blessing, I want you to like the channel, share it to other people, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.